This is IBM Museum, and here I am in front of an open IBM 8239. On the previous video, I tried to go through and to console into this unit, and since it's been in production elsewhere, I was not able to guess at or get in based on the credentials for it. I did have kind of a earlier day that I went through and got the UPS on the AS400, went through, restarted that, got that up and done. Wasn't really necessarily planning on video, but I thought, hey, let's tear into this a little bit. I'd seen online to where this unit did have a non-volatile RAM real-time clock. It talked about if you dispose of the unit, you had to get rid of that module inside, just to avoid, contaminating. They don't want release of lithium batteries in landfills or anything like that. And I found another section that talked about if you lost their credentials to get into a unit, to go through and contact IBM. And I didn't think anybody at IBM would really go through and be willing to help me in that instance. But just opened the cover. I wanted to look around. I wanted to see where that NV RAM module was. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to get off the webcam here and get over to my camcorder. And indeed, there's the Dallas module here. And this is actually a DS12887, just like you'd find on some computers out there. Even in particular, some PS2s have that very similar DS1287 module. And there's not really any way to go through there and any reset jumper or anything else I found. But just as I was looking around, I did everything to go through and figure out the means to get this cover off and everything. I went through and happened to see this reset. And I wasn't sure when I was looking around if I had seen this on my 8275 that's just off the screen here, or this 8239. And otherwise, for a reset sequence, I wasn't really familiar. I was going to go through and try it with the computer connected. I do have my tweener system out of view over here to the left that I have consoled in. Again, I wanted to see if there was any change in output before I would go through and hold on like the reset button as I went through and powered it on or something like that. So we can get flipped over to the screen of the computer. And I don't know why that didn't. Okay, finally get my input to change. Of course, I have that IBM screensaver going, and can go through. Now I've already gone through the sequence to just to verify where I was able to get to, and when I kind of stumbled around, I went through and looked again because I'd seen something the other day in struggling with this. Get back on the screen here. And I can go through, and I need to go through and actually get it to where I can bring up these sources on the screen. So this is the page that I found that was really helpful. And let's go through. I'll scroll down to get to that section. I can go through and turn off the webcam view of me again. Because I'd seen this really strange password that it talked about, this R1QTPS. And here it is where the during, not after the boot process, an option menu will be displayed, and this is where when you go through with the reset button. And I'll show this on the screen, and it gives you two options. It has a timeout of 15 seconds for you to make a menu choice, either that one or two, and you want to get into the start utility code, and this is a little bit different. It's where it says you're prompted to enter a utility password, but we'll see what that shows on the screen. Oh, okay, yeah, excuse me. You prompted to enter the utility password, that's where you type in that R1Q TPS, and it tells you it's valid for all the opcode versions on the system. And then in the menu, which is displayed after the boot process is finished, choose then the appropriate options to load the default configuration and clear the password. And I did go through, and it talks about where, but let's just go through and show this text on the screen. I went through and just copied this section a little bit better. And I'll give a link to where this page is, even though I'll demonstrate the process. But it talks about where the password is cleared to null, that you then can log in with user admin and an empty password. And so let's go through. Let's hide the image display. I can get rid of the interaction with the web page as well. And I'm going to go through. Let's actually flip over to the camcorder view just briefly here, because as you go through, I want to show this reset, and I can get ready to switch over back to the computer. But going through and doing the reset button, and you see the lights change there. We'll go through and release. We're going to flip back over to the computer. And then we have this DRAM test that shows up immediately after you go through and do the okay, and we have a time selection there, and that's where it gets to the point where we've got to enter that utility password. We've gone through and pressed that number 2, and as it said, it goes through 15 seconds, so you've got to be able to respond relatively quick. Back to our image display, we can see that password that we're going to put in here is going to be this R1Q TPS. Now, if you get the password wrong, it'll go through and it checks it, and then it cycles over to the operational. It just goes through and loads the running config as it is, if you're familiar with the Cisco side. So we've entered the password. I'm going to go through and press enter. So we have a menu choice here, and of all the options, we want to go through there and do that 9 for resetting the password. Okay? And so once we do that, press enter. Okay. And then we can go through and do the number 1 for start operational code, the running config. And there's ultimately, of course, those other options we could do other than resetting the password. We could go through and even just wipe out the whole config if we wanted to as well. And I may go through and do that at that point. There's also, once you're able to get logged in to the the system, you can go through and you can wipe the system as it is anyway. Set it back to factory reset. And I'm going to go through, I've got to get a little bit more familiar with the interface. I'll probably run through the manual a little bit more to find out how I can go through and change those parameters from that menuing. But I want to, I'll just go through and briefly, I'll show the clock functions, the setting the clock. You can have it display the clock, of course, and if the clock is wrong, of course, you can go through and set it. But we'll go through, we'll get logged into the machine. You know, we're getting further now. We saw this in that previous video. It loads that running config, and we weren't able to get into those credentials on the system. And it's going through and it's clicking if there were any other units connected on that stack of the unit. Okay. And I think it gets up to something like this point. We did see that login prompt earlier, but if you do an enter, now the password is blank, but we didn't put in a username. So if I press the enter key, it gets back to that login. The login is admin in lowercase letters. Pressing the enter key, and that just immediately doesn't prompt for the password, just goes to this menu. Now, as I say here, is to go through and do a display option, which is number 4. We could go through, I'll briefly kind of show that display, because it says, you know, hey, what do you want to display? And we can choose something as simple as the clock. Now, I've gone through and I've set this already. This reflects my current time now. All the time and date and everything else is set. Now, you have to say, you get back to this where it shows this on the screen. You don't have any... If you want to get back to a prior menu, you can do the question mark. The question mark, I said. Okay, so that takes us back to that earlier screen where we have a set function of 16. And I hope that the text on the screen is visible here. It's not really as visible as it is to me looking over to my panel over here. Now, again, clock is number 3. Okay, so, and we're in the set, it shows set clock. Okay, and then it has the range of items. And then in the brackets, it's got 2021. So if you can type in the year, but within those parameters, but if you just press the enter key on the keyboard, it goes through and accepts what's in the brackets. So we've got 2021. It goes through for the month, and it tells you the values, of course, 1 through 12. I've got 12 in the bracket, so if I press enter, it accepts that. The day, it is the 16th today. So I just go through, that's in the brackets again. I could go through and type it in, but if I press enter, that selects it. The hour of, it's after 10 p.m. now, it's late. And then the minute, and that's still, let's go through and actually update, because through all that cycle, we're off a little bit. I'll go to 33, okay, and then as soon as I do the minute, new date and time is set, and it shows it on the screen. Now, if I do a question mark again, because I want to go through, and if I've made changes, I want to do this 14 for save, because if I try and go through and do that logout process, it'll tell me, hey, you got unsaved changes. Okay, so the configuration is changed. We can do a question mark and do the 8 for the logout. If we wanted to go through and show or ping or do anything else otherwise, we have, you know, that menu that we could go through. And at whatever point that I'll do, I'll have to find out really the menuing steps you through, and I'll have to just get more familiar with the kind of the flow chart through the menus for looking at the different areas of the configuration and go through and work with it. But at least, you know, and as I say, it's got a selection there for to go back to the factory defaults, number 12. And I want to go through and look at the running config on there. At least I'm able to get in to that unit once again, and to see kind of what's going on with it. And let's get back over to the camcorder view of this nice, beautiful unit. Big old PCB that's inside there with all these components and everything else. And I'll get this sealed up, excuse me, sealed up now that I know how to get into it and access the settings, and get to where, you know, I can work with it again, and in future videos, going through and plugging stations in and working with the configuration of this. But I'm further along now. I'm able to get in console into this unit, so that's been great. If you enjoyed this video of the process I've gone through, I'll include the links of where excuse me, I'll have to get something in me and kind of get settled down for the night and everything else, and so I can not have this cough. I've been talking too much for all this. But I'll get the unit sealed up later on. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and click on that link button and subscribe my channel if you've not done so already. Recommend it to your friends so they can subscribe too. But that's all I have for now. This is IBM Museum. Thank you.